And time to the 20, February 26th regular meeting of the Port of Coupeville. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm Marion Burr, Commissioner for District 1.
John Mashasik, District 2, Commissioner present.
Commissioner District 3.
Okay, we have changes to the agenda. I don't see on this agenda the approval of the minutes.
If it's the 26th of the month, you always approve the minutes the month after. So on March the 12th, you'll approve all 3 sets of minutes for February.
Okay,
You will see approval of vouchers. That will be one of the changes to the agenda. So I will jump right in. We're going to strike Commissioner Action 6.
yeah,
We only had a few invoices come in and we were unable to get a voucher bill for that. So we'll take care of those on March the 12th.
okay,
We are going to be moving the executive session instead of at 1:30 PM just to a start time, but instead of 20 minutes, I'd like to change that to 30 minutes. It's
okay,
important we give our community the right time frame when we go into an executive session. And then we are going to be adding section 9, which will move all the rest of everything after that, the executive session, commissioner discussion, public comment, and adjournment. Section 9 will be new business, item number 9.1, and it will be entitled Resolution 319, the application of a rural business development grant.
okay. Is there any discussion on these changes? Then we'll just proceed with it. And we will go to public comment. This is the time for the public to address the commissioners on agenda items or other concerns. The board will consider all comments, but typically will not take immediate action. Please state your name, city of residence, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Do we have any comments?
We have one here live. Anybody on Zoom like to make a public comment? Loretta? Going once, going twice, going 3 times, no public comment.
All right, and now, moving to number 7, financial update.
So let's go ahead and skip that for now. Dawn's having a hard time. She had to reboot her computer, so she said it's gonna take about 5 minutes.
Okay,
Sometimes the Microsoft updates come out on Tuesdays, and so sometimes.
okay, so then we can use this next bit of time to start the discussion on the delegation of authority and lease policy draft, which Chris has been working on with Martin's
Martin's been
contributions.
driving it. Well, Martin, why don't you start taking us
Sure.
through your changes?
Yeah, Chris had sent out version 3 and I think you guys have seen your email and I've made some further additions to that.
Yes,
And,
can you just take us through?
sure, yeah, and those are printed out
Yeah.
on your somewhere. Wait for John to find it.
Okay,
It
so,
should be resolution 318, that loose stack of papers that should have been printed.
It's on your desk,
Got it.
right on your desk.
But is that version 3? Did you bring that from home?
No, I thought,
That's, okay, good.
so how do I know it's version 3?
Question. I don't think that's what.
Haven't we had a policy of putting
Yeah, we
which
have,
version somewhere in the friggin'
and it's just got left out of the process.
That's a good idea.
so we all have the
too
same.
frequently it's left in the process. Yes.
No, it's not.
Well, that's partially I didn't add any version number to my version either.
This is an executive directed point.
The first change that I think I made. It'd be on the page 3, top of page 3.
Uh-huh,
I cleared up some of the references to what the amount of the rent and how we were gonna determine fair market rent.
right,
So the very top of that page. I think this line is new. The amount of the monthly rental shall be fair market rental value for the property. Maybe that was already,
No, that all was all it. In fact, that was,
but in the next, so in the next section, C1 for a lease. I don't think that one had the rate. In that section of which.
so
So,
you have to determine that.
well,
This is not the same as the one I had,
yeah, that's the version that I marked up. That you haven't seen.
And then you gotta go down to
oh,
G.
there was a whole big description about how to find market value. It
Yes.
was,
It's in section G.
oh, it's in section G.
But so how this kind of works is section D describes the process where we're gonna come up with the fair market rental.
Right, okay,
And then up above, under the section for monthly rentals. Number 3 there says the monthly rentals should be rented at the fair market value. And under leases, it says the leases should be the fair market.
oh, okay, I get it now.
So it's just kind of specifying that when we're gonna rent out property, we should rent it out at fair market. And then down here, we can go through now, it talks about how we're gonna come up with the fair.
Okay,
We're gonna do a recurring market analysis. The port should conduct a recurring market analysis at least once every 5 years. And the way we do the analysis is we get to choose, the port staff presumably get to choose whether they use an appraiser, another consultant, or port staff.
I think we discussed that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, the options are all there.
So we can just come up with it ourselves. Staff can come up with it themselves if they want, or they can hire outside. And they're gonna consider all these things, the size, comparable rental rates, amenities, overall economic conditions. I think this mostly came from language from other executive director authorities. So,
Well, actually, it was from the email you gave me too. That was,
yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't think I wrote that.
no, yeah. And then the Port Angeles.
Yeah, I think that one's maybe. Let's see, I think that's, then back to page 3. So I added a couple chunks. For giving the executive director some specific powers. To kind of manage contracts and manage the leases. So I think this section E on page 2 is new.
Page 2 or 3?
Page 3, so. Yeah, section E, lease enforcement and terminations. So the executive director is authorized to enforce all lease terms and conditions, all terms and conditions of port leases. The executive director may issue notices of default or notices of non-compliance with the terms as necessary to protect the port's interest. However, the executive director shall not terminate any lease or initiate eviction proceedings without prior approval. Any proposed termination or eviction shall be presented to the commission for review and approval. The executive director shall keep the commission informed with respect to leases with issued notices. So if they're late, issues a notice. But if it has to go beyond, if they're continue to be non-compliant to the point that they need to be evicted, then that you have to come in.
And,
I think that makes a lot of sense.
and after, based on our last discussion, that whole concept of what the process would be about how a lawsuit is filed, things like that.
Yeah.
I went online to try to find out what that actual process was.
Yeah, good.
And, the fee schedule, they have forms that are available. So, it can be done, by the executive director
Without a
with our permission.
Without an attorney?
It sounds like it. I mean, it's, the forms are down at the court. It's, the part that, we seem to be mired down in is that, typically what, the lawyers recommend, other lawyers online, is that anytime there's a commercial lease dispute, that it, and the top reason it says is, failure to pay rent when it becomes due is one of the top reasons.
Mhm.
It says that, the landlord and the tenant should, sit down and talk, discussion, mediation, legal action. However, it says legal action is, should be, the least used one. And that's true, because, we've had very few legal actions so far.
Yeah.
But that's why I think this situation we're going through now is, relatively new, requiring a lot of new thought process.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good news, bad news. Bad news, we got the situation. Good news is forcing us to kind of come up with understanding that's got to carry forward to future commissions, future DDs,
Yeah.
future tenants.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
anyway,
okay.
that's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you. I agree, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Up on C, on page 3, C1, which was the lease rate for port property shall be the fair market value. Rental value for such property. I don't understand that it's not duplication of what's down on G. I don't understand why it says just that up there, and then you have to go all the way to G to figure out what it means.
Do you think
yeah.
G verbiage should be right under that?
I don't
Yeah.
know,
Well,
but
when I was looking at, that is, I can see how that's kind of confusing. When I was looking at the Port Angeles one, they had a different rate for a short-term rental versus a lease.
yes,
And their policy, which isn't our policy, was that, they determine the fair market value. And then if it's gonna be a long-term lease, the lease rate is the fair market value.
Mhm.
If it's a short-term lease, the lease rate is 150% of it. They charge you more
Right.
if you only have a short-term lease.
Mhm.
And I mean, we could do that, I'm not proposing that, but so our agreement was broken down into short-term, month-to-month and long-term.
even though they were the same,
Well, the rate's the same, but there's two sections because
but
one of them, Chris is allowed, a short-term lease, Chris, or the executive director, is allowed to just
do it.
enter into a short-term, I should call it short-term, a short-term month-to-month rental.
Right.
And a long-term lease, the commission would have to approve
Well, it's fine long term.
a year.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lord.
See, part
You
of
guys
my,
have to approve every.
Yeah.
Lease,
Right.
that's a
Yeah.
year or more?
That was on the other, that's
No.
on Port Angeles.
No, there was 50 years.
part of my problem.
Land leases and things like that had to be approved by the board.
Well, the short,
So you guys really have to approve every lease. I
Yeah.
don't do month to months. I've only been
That's-
holding off on months to months because of
yeah,
trying to get a
that's,
lease policy.
that's what Port Angeles did, they approve every lease.
Okay.
Well, let me ask a question about what you just
That's
said.
fine.
Why are we leaning so heavily on the Port of Port Angeles delegation of authority
Yeah.
and not any of the other ones? To compare them almost like in a spreadsheet,
Yeah,
what does each one of them say about a issue that we're kind of,
that's a
running up and down the.
Question. I didn't go line by line through all of them, all we have is what we worked on in the workshop. I mean, I just looked at that one and looked. That's pretty good, I don't know, we could have a lawyer come up with these things, or we could become experts ourselves.
That line to line comparison was what I thought we were being asked to do, which is why I pulled out initially and said, hey, crap, I can't do that.
No, it just looked, I was reading that one and I was able to understand it, it seemed pretty clear, but we obviously don't need to have this.
Okay, I just want to, kind of
That,
bring it out in the open.
that was why I
Have you done that,
liked it.
line to line?
I've, done the old scan, the other ones,
Uh-huh,
to see if anything jumped out.
Yeah,
uh-huh,
But that whole, Martin is much more, I mean, careful of wording, detail oriented.
yes.
you know, where I think he really does look at every word and phrase going through it. Where I'm kind of like taking clumps of information and seeing if anything sticks out. That I then write a question mark and highlight it and whatnot.
Yeah, well, and if I can say what jumped out to me is that we're talking about two different kinds of leases, but that's not the words that are used in this document. It just says lease.
Well, on the previous page,
Well, yes, you see on the previous page, and but it just says the lease rate, and then it says the
month-to-month
lease.
rental agreements
Right,
is the previous.
but wouldn't it be nice if it said month to month, where we're talking about month to month?
It's not talking about month-to-month. This section is about leases, but
Yes.
this section is from the previous.
Okay, okay, so then this whole thing, right, and so we go back to the need for a lot of careful reading
Yeah,
when the lists are so long and take more than one page. But as long as, like I said initially, number C1 and G seem duplicate, which for me was made things less clear. That's all.
I see what you're saying. So section 3, real property has a item 3. That's duplicate of this item in C1.
Uh,
Uh,
it's,
would it help all of us to have the, like C1, C, state, that is for long-term leases. So use fair market value,
wouldn't hurt.
where, this one, that was a short-term lease.
month-to-month rental agreement is what we call it.
Um, Then it's 3 up here. See, that's really not true, because aren't short-term leases that 150% figure? And not the fair market value for the, right there.
That's how Port Angeles did it.
Yeah, but here we,
When we talked about it at the workshop, we didn't want to do that. We could charge more for short term. Month-to-month.
I thought we were.
Oh, I'm open to it.
No, I'm just saying that this is where the language doesn't seem consistent.
has anybody ever asked for a month to month?
Are any of our tenants on a month-to-month?
Almost all of them. I've been holding off on signing leases until you guys get a lease policy. So when all their leases terminated, I didn't sign 1 to 3 year leases. Because that
I
was on
see.
5 years without a rent increase.
I see.
So I kept the option for the port to be able to raise the rates and then institute these new lease templates. I eventually issued the new lease templates to almost every single tenant except for Beaver tenants.
Okay,
They're still in the old one that expires in 26.
so once we have a policy, you will go back to the tenants and reorganize the terms?
Once we have a policy and once the board determines the new lease rates,
Great.
then I will go back and redo all of the lease contracts. That's already been flushed out legally
Ah,
and then implement it. That was the strategy.
we're sort of hanging fire right now because, we haven't got the policies to.
Yeah.
So does that mean we're gonna do a fair market value assessment before we
Mhm.
ask Chris to present these new leases?
Well, the leases have already been presented. They've already signed them. They're already on them. But
So the new, you mean they're using the new temp,
Mhm.
but it's,
month to
you
month.
also said that there's month-to-month.
Yeah, now some of the new tenants such as Penn Cove Outfitters and June, they require at least a year to be able to get insurance and finance and stuff. So I put them on a
Yeah.
year lease. But, you know,
So the term varies based on tenant. Most of them are
Yeah.
month-to-month.
Yeah.
A few of them are on a year.
every single one of your farm tenants are on the month to month.
And what
And
rate?
and all 4 of the wharf tenants, but I did the same thing with Wharf Dog, put them on a year. are on a 1-year lease, all on new templates except for Beaverton.
And what rate are the signed lease?
All of the tenants here that are relatively new in the last 3 years of Walton, the 86 cents a square foot, which was the highest rate. But the tenants that have been here since then, such as the wine shop, the cafe, and the cheese shop, and Weaverton Land Trust, their rates were frozen during COVID.
So what's the current? It depends on what,
It
but it's lower than these,
is.
and they're all different, or they're all.
Yep. No, they're all different. This was a mess.
Okay, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no.
It is.
It was a mess, and Jean-Marc Therese came in and the board tackled this for the first time.
Now's a chance to untangle
Chance to
this.
change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so now we can come up with a policy of how we're gonna do it.
So what do we think needs to be done first? Fair market value survey?
We
So
can-
we're not
This
changing-
delegation of authority should be done first. Then you got, that authorizes John to 5 years.
Okay,
I mean, I think Chris can start. Staff can start gathering some of this info. There's nothing to prevent you from doing research. We can, after,
Well, this doesn't contain any dollar amounts for rent.
No.
yeah, this is just the process that.
This is the process, so I understand, we've got to have the process in place
Yeah.
before we can get down to business.
Yeah. But if you wanted to start working, you could start looking. at it.
If we drag this out too long.
Yeah.
Trying to make it perfect.
Yeah.
When we know we can always change it later if we find a glitch somewhere that isn't working. I think I would really like to get this done today. I
so the
really
sooner we
would,
get the delegation authority done, that's the first step to moving
Yes.
forward.
yes.
And then continuing that is then, she might direct somebody in the staff to survey all the local businesses about what they're paying
Mhm.
per
Well, that
square
would
foot.
be Chris's job as
Yeah.
ED.
Give it delegated.
We have that information, I just don't remember. We have 14 tenants, so
No, I'm talking about the
The survey.
doing a
the
study.
people in
Study,
those
yeah.
stores, because that's our market. Your market's not
Well,
open.
that's one of the things that has to be decided what our market is.
Yeah, well, that's kind of,
That's part of,
this is the guidance that we're coming up with.
that's part of the job of,
Yeah,
You guys can also take a look at section D on page 3, because if you're saying that the AD has no authority to sign 1 year or longer contracts, then the executive director should not have any authority to renew the same contract. This is where this
there's
is,
lease renewals.
yes. It's authorized, so you're saying the ED can renew a 3-year lease, but can't sign one? That to me is counterproductive, it's not in line.
It's not consistent.
no,
Do you think the ED should just, there shouldn't be any board approval of any, or?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I think that, we don't have any 50-year leases and 20-year leases and 30-year leases, so I'm not really worried. You ever do have property like that, that should be a decision. But for our rental properties here, if the ED is gonna go out, establish the legal template for the lease, which done, is gonna go out and establish the lease rates for the board to approve. Why wouldn't the executive director be allowed to go out and have them sign the approved template and the approved lease rate? I don't get it. I don't understand why. This is where, to my mind, the ED bureaucracy comes in
mhm.
and prevents me from doing my job when I've already done it. I've already got the lease templates, been fleshed out by the attorney. I've been tasked to come up with market rates. The board approves the market rates. Why do I need a board approval on a lease at that point?
Which,
I'm
which
confused.
ones
That's
would
like-
require approval?
We trust Chris to do his job, and he's been doing it well. To be looking to the future, somebody we don't know, and or some commission that doesn't know their new ED very well, how much power do they want to shift to that side of the table
Yeah.
in the future, or is that something we fix, this gets fixed at a future time as far as delegation of authority? That the power shifts back and forth on future commissions and future EDs, unbeknownst to all of us.
Well, we can't tell the future.
Yep.
We have to deal with what we've got, and that's my decision.
Yeah. So,
I do have a question about the terms of leases and the 5-year. If leases aren't always for 5 years, what do you do when the rate? Does the tenant understand that the rate can change during the term of his lease?
Usually the lease says how the rate will change.
Yes, exactly. So this is why I'm just posing the question to you guys. There's supposed to be a rate study according to this for every 5 years, right? Which means that if the executive director has a new tenant and they sign a 5-year lease, those are the rates locked in for 5 years.
For the 5, but
Plus CPI increases, right? That's always locked, that's always.
Whatever the terms of the
Yeah,
lease
which
templates
is-
are, which
yeah.
say how the.
Right, it could be that we're gonna raise your rent, you're a growing business, we're gonna start off at this rate, and over the next 5 years, it's gonna be up to the maximum rate or 3 years or whatever. There'll also be increases for CPI, consumer price indexes, which is based on the previous year, but well, that's all baked in the new lease.
Mhm.
If those rates have been set and approved by and the lease templates have been set and approved by the board, they've been pushed up by the attorney, then the executive director should have the ability to sign leases with those approved parameters up to 5 years. My input would be not to allow any lease entered in by the Port of Coupeville longer than 5 years by the executive director.
what about the renewals? Somebody's in for 3 and wants another 3. Now they've crossed the 5-year line.
They want 3 and then have another.
And then
3.
want to renew for another.
Oh, I see, takes another.
Then the rate change comes in year 5 and they wanna be there for a total now of 6,
Right.
but
So if,
2 3s.
if when they go to the renewal, if it is put in the executive director at that time should understand that your rate may or may not go up in year 6. Because we perform rate fair market values every 5 years.
So that second 3
Renewal.
years,
yeah,
the tenant knows what he's gonna pay for 2 of them. And the third one, he can't know yet because we don't know yet.
true. That's just, reality, maybe.
Is that,
Yeah.
does that happen?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, pandemic threw a curve into everything,
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Lots of things throw curves.
yeah, so the economy. So,
Okay, so the one of the.
I hear what Chris is saying, he does, by doing all this, templates, fair market value studies, et cetera, we shouldn't get bogged down in having our name on the lease agreement.
Of approving, having to approve it.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what he's
Well,
saying.
it gives him the freedom to negotiate
I mean, in
within the constraints of,
So-
Right.
of the lease agreement.
It seems to me that once we get all these templates done and the policies done, subsequent boards and EDs will have the procedure in front of them and they just go by what it says to do. And
The process is there.
it'll be so easy for people coming after us.
So I have 2 things. In the past, since I've been here, we've been presented with an overview of a new tenant. Become a bit presentation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's required by any policy or if signing a lease is
No,
required.
It's
just-
it's just something that I want to do. I want you guys to know who your tenants are. You only have so many, you don't have a lot, right?
And that's fine, we don't have a policy, this has been decided to do, it. That's great. But, now we're coming up with our policy, but I think there has been a de facto, the commission has been looking at all of the tenants and somewhat making
But
a
not
decision,
approving, but not approving.
or maybe not, I've never said no, but I guess that would have been my opportunity to say, no, I don't approve of this lease, I don't know why. I would
We'll
have
make
said
the
that.
motion, say that,
I could have made a motion,
right?
directed Chris to not sign the lease or something.
Well, if you
Right,
have
so the
something
motion
secret
passed.
about the applicant, that the rest of us weren't aware of, if you were aware of something about the person who wants to come that nobody else.
Could bring it up at the meeting.
So we're 1 minute away from our executives.
Okay, we'll have to
Yeah.
resume this. My second point on this, that I'll just keep short, is that, like, I couldn't find the Anacortes or Port Angeles that we base this. But my memory is that anything over 1 year.
It
Has
is
to get
1:30.
board
I
approval.
think we need to stop right now.
Alright.
I don't see Tim on here right now. I don't know. Here it is. He is coming on now, so.
We'll pick up.
Oh,
Yeah,
There it is.
you won't forget.
Yeah, I don't. Good discussion.
There he is.
Okay. How you doing, Tim? Okay, Mary.
We can't hear you. Tim, you need to unmute.
How about now?
Yeah.
And I think do we want Loretta at our,
No, I haven't broken up the groups yet.
Oh.
You need to announce the executive session and everything.
all right, this is in, right, I have to do. Per RCW 4230-110, to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency matters relating to agency enforcement actions, or to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the party, when public knowledge regarding the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency, and we are now in executive session.
So hold on a second, we need to do breakout groups, so. Okay. So we'll start the executive session on 1:32. It goes for 30 minutes. And if the board needs longer time, I'll come out of the executive session and let the community know how long it'll be extended, so. The board is going to extend the executive session for another 20 minutes. So we're looking to resume back at 2:23 p.m. Thank you.
Correct.
Okay, the board is coming out of the executive session at 2:25 p.m. and we are going to extend this executive session for another 20 minutes, which would put the board.
10 minutes?
5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes.
Well, you don't need to look at this. 20 minutes coming back out at 2:45 p.m. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, it is 2:45 p.m. We are exiting the executive session. No decisions were made during the executive session. Commissioner Burr, you have the floor. We want to probably go back and let Dawn do her financial
Yes,
presentation.
please.
Dawn, you there?
You probably.
Can you guys hear me?
There you
Oh,
go.
there you are. Hi, Dawn.
We can hear you.
Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My mic's.
It was the January balance sheet, right?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, Chris. Sorry, Chris. It looks like can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear and see you.
I can't hear you.
We can hear you.
Hotel rooms are in.
What did we do last time? It was the settings or something. It was the owl. Did it switch to a different audio?
Oh, hold on. Can you hear us now, Don? You're actually muted now.
I can hear now. Can you hear me?
So,
Okay. I was like, my earphones went out and I'm like, oh no, how do I program this? Okay. Does anybody have any questions in regards to the financials? I know that it's a light month and There wasn't a whole lot going on, other than the fact that we are in a much better position than we were last year this time.
I have a question.
Yes,
At the very end, for the equity, there's an asterisk on the, retained, earnings.
okay. I'm gonna close my door. I cannot
What
hear.
is, what is that for?
I don't know if she heard you, we might have to repeat yourself.
Okay, on the last part of the equity, there's an asterisk on the retained earnings.
What about the
And then there's
balance sheet?
no explanation of why.
Got the balance sheet, is that the one you're-
Oh, that little star has always been there. I'm not sure why it's been there.
Okay,
Sorry about that. I did make one correction, though, that you guys should know about when I was looking at the previous year comparison. I noticed that there was a negative dollar entry in the IDD envelope project expense. And what that consisted of is a deposit that should not have been put there. And so I put it up into the income. So your total expenses for the IDD are about 16,000. There's a difference there now. So under the IDD project, you have 142,000. Can I share?
Yeah, hold on a sec, yeah,
Okay.
sorry about that, Dawn. Okay, go for it.
Share. And so if I do this. Can you see this? Oh, wait, I'm gonna zoom it up. There we go. Is that better?
yes,
Okay.
Yes,
On your reports, there was a negative number here. And what that was a deposit from the DAP, the state, from the DAP grant. And I moved it right here. So your income increased by a little over 20,000. And your expenses increased by the same amount. So I just wanted to let you know that correction was made. So in other words, your wharf envelope project had a negative number and it made it look like there was a refund to somebody and there wasn't. Other than that, our comparison between last year this time is significantly different. We've obviously looked better in our rents with the wharf, with having everything rented as opposed to in 2024. In January at this time, there wasn't a full rental of tented, or not all of the leases were fulfilled. The same thing with Green Bank. There was an increase, almost everything increased. There was just a big difference. And I know a lot of it had to do with, the wharf project and leases needing to be fulfilled, but there is definitely a significant difference in our income for January of 2025, even without the 2 grants that we received funds on in January and deposited.
so John, when you mean by the leases that weren't fulfilled, was that because we were late in getting deposits in?
No, wasn't there? It might be outfitter, no, because these ones were being rented.
Yeah, I mean, June took over on January 1. I had the checks and everything deposited for that, and the same thing with Penn Cove Outfitters.
Well,
So,
I know that the kayaks was paid ahead of time.
right, the only one that was
Then
behind.
I don't think that they had moved in yet in January.
Who, Penn Cove? Outfitters.
Yeah,
But even still, Loretta would have paid up to that point because she was always on time.
yeah,
So I'm a
that's,
little concerned about that. I mean, I know that Murray has not, you know, those.
there was an issue with an NSF check at some point in 2024.
Hmm.
Or it not being deposited in the right month, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, because when you look at the paddle pantry and the beaver tails, I mean, even without Loretta's being posted 1 month earlier and 1 month later, there was a significant difference in our income.
That's very interesting. And we knew that Beavertail was late, but I don't recall, because I remember you sent the email and said, hey, we haven't gotten a deposit from anybody because Murray was hanging on to the checks.
Yeah,
So we need to investigate this more. We should not be that behind.
yeah,
I know the wine shop here at the farm was late. Either December or January, I remember that, but I don't remember writing gifts and collectibles being late. This is.
you don't remember the outfitters being late?
No, because in order for them to take over the lease, Loretta paid her section all the way up to the day that the lease transferred, and
Yeah,
I
and she
don't.
might
I
have
don't-
paid it early because of that, in order for the lease to
Oh,
be taken
okay.
over.
I don't
So
sign the
you may
lease
have
until
that.
I don't sign a lease until I have their first month's rent and their copy of their certificate of insurance.
Yeah,
Well, I'll sign a lease even without the COI, but I
Yeah.
don't sign a lease without the first month's rent and the $750 damage deposit.
yeah, and most likely it was paid early
It
because of
probably
that.
was for June and Penn Cove Outfitters, but
Yeah,
Mall would have paid the rent up to that point, so, okay,
yeah. I'll look into it for you. No problem.
thank
But
you.
everything has increased all the way down the line here as far as the income, even events has more than doubled.
So Dawn, if it was paid early, would it show up in December instead of January?
Yes, correct. Because this is a cash basis report right here.
Yeah. So it's probably just. Was
Yeah.
it December?
Yeah. Yeah, Penn Cove Outfitters, Loretta just texted me, said that they took over December 1.
Yeah.
So.
And then as far as the expenses, a lot of our projects have wind down, so that's a lot of the reason why the expenses are looking better than they did the year before. So other than that,
Questions for Dawn? or-
No,
yes,
I'm good.
No, I was just asking in the room if we had any other questions for Dawn. I think this looks good. I don't know if we need any
Fine.
further to see anything else.
Nope.
Thank you, Dawn.
you're
Thanks,
welcome. And I'm sorry, you guys, I really am not hearing you very well, so if I keep repeating, but
Thank you, Dawn.
you're welcome. You guys have a good day. Let me see, I'll stop sharing this. There you go.
And now we are into the old business of our delegation of authority and lease policy draft. Yes,
I believe we were talking about whether the executive director would need to get board approval for a lease.
Of month to month to 5 years.
The the Board of Everett lease policy says month to month, short-term agreements, with no board or commission required. Anything 1 year or more, board of commission approval required. The draft that we were looking at before, that we were basing all this from, also says that term leases need to get approval from the commission, month to month rentals don't, so that's why
Mhm.
it still says that here. But if we wanted to
Uh,
readdress that or change it, we can. I'm not a lawyer.
It-
I don't know what's the best policy. I'm just kind of grabbing stuff.
I'm tending to not want to be picky.
Yeah, I'm trying to move
I
through this.
just
real
move
quick.
through this because basically what we've been presented with is, quite adequate. I like Martin's additions.
Mhm.
I like those that
They were
were
great examples.
stop, the part about the fair market value with all the options and suggestions.
Mhm.
It's not just do it however you want. They're in here to help people know what they could choose.
That's why we appointed him.
Yeah, that's good.
Um,
Just make sure that section D on page 3 equals what you guys want to do. Because if you guys require board approval to do 1 year or longer leases, then you
Yeah.
shouldn't allow the DB to renew.
I see.
You know what I mean? Because you're basically re-signing another contract. That's all I'm saying.
But it's kind of, it's a tenant that we already previously approved. So maybe
True.
we don't need to see it again, or maybe we do.
And
And
we
if there were
did,
issues, you would know it.
and we were right at the cusp when we wrote for executive session that we were saying you could sign the lease, right? And we
But
weren't,
he was saying he'd like to be able to sign it without, we were kind of debating it.
Yeah,
I was, my, not signing it, I could sign it, but it was like, if the board approves the lease template, they approve the market rate study, then everything is in place to enter into a lease.
So then, he's saying maybe we shouldn't need to approve all leases, and we should just say if he uses the template and he uses the dollar amount, we don't even need to approve it.
so maybe the issue is how much negotiation goes on in the setting up of a lease, like.
Oh, good point, none.
There's not, a word set in
That's
the
a great
rate,
question.
so there's not really. a
There
lot
is
of room
not,
for him to
because I
negotiate.
don't, the only thing I changed on that lease, John, that's a really good point. Is I will input the descriptor of the business and what they're allowed to do only. From a positive standpoint,
Mhm.
this is a retail establishment that is selling, retail goods that are non-perishable. It's just kind of a basic, hey, this business is to rent kayaks and paddle boards,
And then
period.
maybe the length of some, you said some are requesting, maybe someone wants a 2-year lease, and so you would,
Typically 3 is what I usually
But
get.
that-
Here they all
they
want
might-
5.
they negotiate that. That's sort of a negotiation.
Oh, you mean like the term, like length of time?
Yeah,
I have no problem if they want a year up to 5 years. With agriculture, I try to make them longer because I want them to feel safe and
yeah.
it's a different setup, right?
Mm.
But
Mm.
as far as a lease term, if I see something that, is, you guys are brand new, you've never had a business before, I actually steer them away from a 5-year lease.
Mhm.
And I present a 1 year. And if they're like, you know what, I feel good about that, I wanna limit my risk, then I push them into a 1 year. But if they're like, no, I wanna make sure that I'm here for 3 years, see if I can make this work. And I wanna, guarantee my lease rate, then I'll say, okay. We've always been very generous in letting people out of their leases. The penalty in the old form was 1 month's rent.
But when you say guarantee the lease rate, the lease, I'm asking here.
Yeah.
But the lease template that we're using, or that we intend to use in the future
Mhm.
for our longer term leases, 1 to 5 years or whatever, that includes, terms that would automatically raise the rate every year, right?
It will, depending on how you guys finish out this whole thing.
Okay, so it can't, but
It can. It does say that, Martin, in the sense that every year your rent will go up by the CPI, the consumer price index. And then if we want to build in an increased rate plan.
No, I'm fine with CPI.
Yeah, CPI is built in.
So they don't lock in,
Nope,
it
very low.
changes
It
every
changes.
year.
Yeah.
It's based on the previous year's result, and that's why we always did them in May.
And every time we do a new lease, it's gonna start at whatever our current fair market rate is, and it's gonna adjust through CPI for the remainder as it's
Yes.
specified in the lease.
Yes, so all your Green Bay Farm, any new lease in the last 2 or 3 years has been at the 86 cents a square foot based on the 2017 agreement that we had with our tenants. they can run at the 86 cents a square foot. But we have tenants that have been here for 8 years and going that never got up to their 86 cents because we paused rent increases in 2000. And we haven't unpaused.
Tenant improvements, are those a negotiable item?
Well, they're listed very clearly in the rent. In the lease contract. So what happens is if they want to make an improvement. That involves any changing of the structure, either internally or externally, it must be approved by the executive director.
So painting the walls is no big.
No, that's not an infrastructure.
Putting up a wall.
Putting up a wall, right? So Becca, when she moved in the middle thing, went through the entire process of us coming in with my facilities maintenance team. She wants to put up a wall, no problem, but we made sure that they did it according to our standards, which was do not drive anything into the cement. It has to be attached to the east and west walls and the ceiling. Because it needs to be put in its original condition when they leave. And we don't really allow anything to the outside of it. It's not in their lease.
So is the discussion now whether or not we want to give the ED the power to do the leases without board approval? Is that what we're really talking about?
Yeah, we never really resolved.
No, what's, Chris says he can do it by himself. As long as all the directions on how to do it are in the policy.
Yeah, I think I'd like to reserve the right to review. I mean, I guess I'm open to it. I'm concerned that all the other examples we have commission approval for that.
Well,
So I don't know why we would, I don't know if it's a good idea or
what's the problem with doing it that
not.
way?
With letting Chris decide, I guess.
Yeah,
that
what is the?
We don't get the
Well-
oversight in who's
Martin's
operating at the port.
has a good point, because if you're renting a 10,000 square foot warehouse. Like a lot of these ports do, Port of
Right,
Everett,
right.
right, Skagit, they have big
Yeah.
properties.
I thought of a reason.
Yeah.
What if he's renting to a type of business that we would rather not have here, but it seems fine to him? But we really didn't want a tattoo parlor.
Exactly. Anything, it just removes our ability to exert control over it.
I think that would be an issue that might come up is the kind of.
The tattoo thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, or the funeral home. Often retail.
I mean, we can always change it later if it becomes burdensome to review all these leases.
Yeah, I
We've
think-
been reviewing all the tenants that.
I'd like to have the board.
I don't feel that strongly about it, but I see in the other templates that a year or more leases are reviewed by the commission. So
Somebody comes in and wants to rent all of Farm C. Because they're going to have some big, multiple thing going, and we certainly would want to be in on that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, more, you're kind of driving this thing, so I
Okay.
make those changes and.
Well, that's as it. It says,
You don't want to change anything else, like removing number 1 and number 3 and number 1 on page 3, because they say the exact same thing. The whole fair market thing seems to show quite a bit here.
page 3, what's
C1.
It would be C1, and then I guess page 2 would be A, but it's A3, so 3, because it says, you look at the top of page 3, the amount
Yeah.
of monthly rental shall be
Yeah.
fair market relevant, it's the same thing.
That's because that one's for month to month.
That's real property.
That's okay.
One of them's for month to month and one of them's for the term lease.
Okay.
So it's just saying that each one of those is gonna be.
Yeah,
That's what it's-
because, yeah,
But isn't the one at the top of page 3? Isn't that inconsistent with what you've been saying about the 150%? Unfair.
I was, the 150% wasn't the example that was from Port Agents.
That's
That's what they do.
we haven't, we haven't done.
We don't need to, we don't currently do that. And
Okay.
we don't need to do that. We could if we wanted to charge more for short-term rents, but we don't,
But you're not doing that.
we're not doing that.
No.
No, that's not in it, because
I'm
we're
just
trying
charging
to
these.
encourage business, not make it tough to
Yeah,
start.
I think it's fine to have month to months, but you know, I prefer longer term leases and.
Okay. It's starting to me to look like it's where we need to be, Right.
I thought
without
so.
any more.
There was another thing that had come back and forth with Chris that. Changes I made, so. E,
here on page 3.
Lease enforcement. So this is a new section that says that the executive director can enforce the lease. And I read through it before and
Oh,
issue,
right.
issue notices, but they can't,
But the commission has to review and approve if it's gonna be a termination.
Yes,
which is kind of what we
We
just
just
went
did.
through now. That's why we have to have an executive session.
yeah, right.
And then further, Chris was concerned about, you know, just being able to go after someone who owes us money for something without filing a lawsuit, but to be able to have the authority to pursue those things. And so there's another section, because that part is on the leases part. So that section only covers leases, but we could have other
Right.
agreements where people aren't they aren't fulfilling their contract.
Service agreements.
Yeah, a service agreement. They didn't show up and why, does Chris have the authority to call them and complain and, you know,
Take them to court.
yeah, well, not take them to
Not to
court
come to court
without
without
approval, but to pursue it, you know, can he follow through? So on page 4, there's another section. In section 4B.
Yeah.
That's another new section I added. That he can enforce the terms of agreements and obligations, issue notices, demanding action, take administrative steps. He can collect on standing accounts receivable, issue invoices, demand payments. He can even write off accounts
Up to five
up to
thousand.
Up to
$5,000. You can just say, you know what, we're gonna. This guy owes us $4,000, he's offering to pay us $1,000, I'm just gonna
Yeah,
say
they-
yes,
yeah.
take the 1,000, don't even have to tell the commission.
These things do come up in the course of business.
Yeah.
And the $5,000 anymore isn't that much money.
But more than 5,000, or if they're not responsive and he wants to initiate a lawsuit,
Then
it gets commission approval.
Good.
I like that.
I don't think if there's anything, the other ones that are highlighted are like the dollar amounts
Yes.
for things, I didn't change any of those, that was what Chris said. Dollar amounts for different types of what kind of consultants he's allowed to hire without checking with us and enter into contracts for repairs and things, how much those amounts are.
Yeah.
I was comfortable with that.
Is that $40,000 a reasonable amount?
Yeah, I think so, because, we had opportunities to enter into, Mary and I, into contracts that were much more than that. We said, no, we're not gonna pay that much for a consultant. That's a lot of money. And so having
I
a,
wonder if it needs.
but just to let you know, if we're gonna hire a consultant up to 40,000, it's gonna be part of a bigger project that you will have to approve anyways.
It would be in the budget.
It'd be in the budget, it'd be a capital, improvement, and it would be something you guys would have to approve.
Mhm.
Both in the budget and the capital finance plan, and if it's a new project, then you'd have to approve that as well.
Original
I'm good with
contract cost.
If it needs to be increased, we can increase it later.
So basically, I don't think we've made any changes. So far, we've gone through before this draft that's in front of you and. I think it as written.
Hmm,
I would want to, if you guys don't mind, if you guys look at the very, the end of, the grants, that's a whole new section that I haven't found, which I thought was brilliant. Being able to look at that, and my suggestion, if you guys like the way this is now, then let's clean it up and let me put it on an official. Form.
It's got highlighted.
Well, but I wanna put this on good paper without the highlights, that's how we do our resolutions, right, that's on the record, so, and then you guys can sign that on the next meeting.
Do we wanna get a lawyer to review this?
I would like to, I'd like to have Tim run through this.
yes,
Given that
what
I'm
you gave us
copying
this
and
template.
pasting things that.
Give him a
I'm
fresh
not a
copy.
lawyer, I think it'd be, no, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I would appreciate.
Yeah, I think we should, right, make it airtight.
yeah, that's.
He may see things we haven't covered.
Sure.
So page 8. Under section 14, staff and employee administration. Why is D right there about? I know it's got by port cruiser day labor. But how is that a staff? Why is it there and not somewhere else, maybe?
Well, because this is not using 25,000 to go get a vendor to do a job. It's actually using port staff to do a job.
Okay,
So if, for example, so if we're gonna spend over $25,000 to replace all the planking on the wharf, and we're doing it with our own staff, this is just saying the board needs to approve that. But I'm allocating $25,000.
You could do it as like a.
Yes, but if it's over 25 grand, that's a big chunk of labor. You guys should know what that project is and, yeah.
and
So all the repairs and stuff that staff is doing, that's just kind of the limit to how much you can do on your own.
Exactly.
If there's a repair that staff's gonna do, then.
so in that same section A, 14A, it has employee benefits. And so this is headed into selection of the health plan. When we presented somebody's delegation of authority that specifically referenced health plans?
I remember it sort of came up in the conversation, I don't remember
Yeah,
at the workshop.
I just, that's one that, obviously is my bugbear about. I think, everybody in the world's being ripped off by the industry and health plans. And I think, there are new community health plans being developed, but we don't have one on Coupeville Island yet.
Oh, go get one for us.
We're working on it.
Oh, good.
But
So,
when it's time to choose that again this year, I think Rick is gonna
well,
bring it to our attention and let us help, if there's any decision to be made.
well, I just, we're approving like, $60,000 a year. Which is a,
Right, we know.
But what do you want us to do right now? Just because it says benefits, doesn't mean we have to talk about this every
It says
time.
administer and manage benefits. I don't know if that also includes the adoption of benefits.
Do you want us to take it out so it doesn't say that he?
I just want us to be more informed.
Sure. Well, are you okay with in November, or whenever those benefits
Of
get
course.
chosen?
It would be
we
in
can put it
August.
on the agenda, we can talk
Yeah,
about it.
It's almost like,
course.
what effort was made to see what alternatives
Yeah,
exist.
I'd like to do
I
that.
sent you the link.
The-
the Google link.
I know, but the time is when there's
Sure.
an annual time to choose the
Sure.
benefits. right?
Yeah, so maybe,
For the fall, the winter,
as long as we have the understanding that,
we're gonna look at.
right now, because we have to approve that $60,000 a year.
Yeah.
Every month.
Okey dokey.
Yes,
So.
we understand.
Okay,
So I'm gonna send it to Tim for review
great.
and hopefully have it back on the 12th for you guys to, well, I'll have it for you before then to review and then.
Do you wanna look at the grants thing? The one.
Oh,
the
yeah,
grants?
it's the last one. It starts on
It
page
just
9.
gives him the authority to apply for grants on his own.
Up to a certain amount though, right?
Up to a port contribution
Of
of
50,000.
50,000.
Yeah.
So you could apply for $1 million grant where it's just getting us money, but if we have to. do 50,000,
Yeah, if our matching is $50,001, then I'll need to get board approval.
and that's just the application. Oh, and accept, he could accept the grant. But the commission could always.
The beauty of that whole paragraph is the very last clause at the bottom, which is so blacked out, it's hard to read now. But it said, if upon review, the commission determines that the grant application is not in the best interest of the agency, then it may
Yeah.
direct the executive director to rescind
Yeah.
the application.
Yeah.
So he can go ahead and apply for anything he wants.
Usually with grants, you apply and you don't, and it says he has to tell us after at the next meeting after he applies.
Yeah,
So they'll apply for and sometimes these are time sensitive, as the other one we're talking about today. And so he's gonna apply and then he's gonna tell us that he applied for it, and then we're not gonna find out if awarded the grant for 6 months or 3 months at least. And so we'll have time to discuss it. If we hate it, then we could get awarded the grant and just say, oh, we don't accept it.
Yeah, we didn't have to
And
take the
nothing
6.4 million on the bucket. We could have.
So you like that, which,
yes,
Yeah.
because when all is said and done, we're in charge.
But I think it we're still in charge, but it gives him a lot more flexibility to just apply for grants without having to. follow
You
to
understand the
schedule.
timing of these.
I understand this
Okay.
grant.
Much more efficient, so that much more efficient.
Okay.
so we're cool with this going to the lawyer now.
Yes,
Just wanna clean it up and take it to the lawyer, right?
Okay.
And have to review it. Yeah.
and now we have the added resolution 319, which Martin has presented.
That's what we just did.
Yeah, this is the new one that we just, Chris and I worked on.
So now you're basically at commissioner discussion, item 11, which is now item 11.
Well, don't we need to approve this?
No. Let's let Tim review it first.
No,
No,
he's talking about the
319,
new resolution.
the agricultural grant,
Grants.
the application for
We're still on this one. My bad.
Oh, that's what got handed right
The
there.
new agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep,
This
sorry about
one right
that.
here.
Nope, that's.
A little one.
So I can speak to I went to a conference last week and I met with, or there was a guy there from the USDA that presented to the agricultural conference in Mount Vernon about this grant program. And I was listening to it, I'm like, wow, I think we could qualify for this grant program. It's through the USDA Rural Development program. A match isn't required, but it helps you get more points. And the match doesn't have to be, they call it a cash match, but we're not giving the cash to them. We're just agreeing to spend the cash on the project, and the project includes staff time. So this project I have in mind is the same as the project I had before, which was a year ago. We applied for another grant and weren't awarded it, but it's planning and design for a new agricultural washing and storage structure. And it would, so the first part would be having meetings with the farmers and finding out what their specific needs are. And that would be, those meetings would be facilitated by port staff. And so the time that port staff is spending on this project, facilitating meetings and making this project happen, we can count as dollars, because that's a contribution that the port is making in cash to those employees. who are- So that's what the cash means. It's not that we're giving cash.
And all we're doing with this resolution is approving the application.
Authorizing Chris to apply
And administer.
and administer the grant. But we would.
If it's awarded.
Yeah, depending on our delegation of authority later, if it's awarded, then we would have to sign an agreement saying we accept and we're gonna do it. So,
Can we have a motion?
yeah, I move that we adopt resolution number 319.
I second that motion. Any more discussion?
I think they used to do that here. When they had vegetables out there in that hallway, they would clean them up, the potatoes and the rutabagas and all like that.
Well, I mean,
When it was the school was here.
yeah, the growing veterans, for example, just washes with a hose on the ground. You
Yeah.
can do that, but this would be like a concrete floor and maybe hoses that hang from above and a mesh table.
Maybe some
And-
cold storage.
Yeah, and then, some stainless steel tables and a walk-in cooler where they could store the vegetables after they wash them.
It
And
really would encourage a business.
yeah, and those are, at a larger farm, you build that on site. But since these people are leasing, they don't want to invest $5,000 or whatever to build a ramshackle version of that. And so this would provide that could be used by all the tenants and attract.
And all
new
we're
and better.
doing is authorizing him to try to get it.
So we're
why.
applying for a grant that's ramshackle.
Well, no, I'm saying if we don't get a grant, people might For 5,000, you can build a ramshackle.
A ramshackle.
If we get the grants, hopefully we can build a nice one.
Oh, man, it's good.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are we ready for a vote?
I am,
I am, all in favor?
I,
Unanimous.
Thank you.
How many copies do we need signed?
Just one.
I got one on the door.
You got one more.
Okay. Did we have to discuss anything else today?
Any further discussion?
Yeah, we're up to, commissioner discussion.
so. Are there any other topics that you think we should have for future workshops?
Well,
Thank
I
you.
think we each need to have an opportunity to share our ideas for the goals. The longer term or maybe even short term goals, considering the fact that this leadership is going to change so dramatically with the new ED. Well, I hope not dramatically, I think so, but where we want the port to go and what we want to focus on once the IDD money is spent.
Yeah, like a vision and values
The
of the.
vision and values and goals, I think, would be a nice, big, fat, general thing. So we all know where everybody's coming from as we move forward.
So this is, comp scheme kind of.
Strategic.
Yeah,
guide?
a strategic, that would be good.
Maybe
Strategic.
less specific than a strategic plan, but just kind of, what are the port's values?
So before I can really weigh in. This whole discussion about having like an assistant ED or ED and training concept. How does that play out in your opinion?
How's it play out?
Yeah, I mean, how do we create or have that position in place now instead of 2 weeks before your last day?
Yeah, right. Okay, so I think there needs to be some frank discussions on how the port is currently structured. And how it's going to be budgeted to accommodate that person.
Wouldn't that be a separate workshop as far as staffing and job descriptions and?
Honestly, I think that it could be. Or it would just, in my mind, it was. More of the executive director puts together a plan and then it goes into an executive session.
Okay, but that might be.
Because you're talking salaries, you're talking,
That could be a
Reviews.
considerable length of time.
it could be a very considerable length of
So
time.
it could be a workshop that is primarily executive session.
It would be a meeting with a very lengthy, it wouldn't be a workshop, it'd be a meeting with a very lengthy executive.
Well-
Workshops are meetings.
But, well, they are, but
It's a concept.
Yeah,
It's a
there's different
concept. It
rules.
doesn't have to be a label.
Yeah, but I think that is legal to have a workshop with an executive session, right?
Well, it's a meeting anyway.
And in that way, you could have like, executive session, you extend it.
The difference is the public comment period and then maybe the notifications.
yeah, workshop is structured where you guys are working and you could. It doesn't have to have public comment and, if you want public
It
comment, you
doesn't
can
have
do a
all the
hearing.
vouchers and all that stuff.
Right, and a workshop is single topic focused, right?
Right.
So, I'll look into that and see if there was a workshop on the port's corporate structure.
Yes.
And whether that could be an executive session.
Yeah, the executive session, you're thinking because we're gonna be talking about some information that
Yes.
we don't want.
Well,
We're not ready to.
It isn't public.
You got
Just
future plans.
salaries, you got performance reviews, those are things that can be protected in an executive session.
Yeah,
We can't do that we could, it would have salary things and a lot of things that can be in an executive session.
well, that would be because, it may get down to talking about individual current staff.
Yes.
people.
It'd be coming down to performance reviews, right?
Yes,
Yes.
so that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be a good topic.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very vital.
So now we've got two separate ones, right? Goals and strategic
Goals,
planning and,
staff, future
Staff.
staff.
Structure.
structure for, yeah,
Which includes, who's, like, what we
It
expect.
includes a lot of things.
and it's a big topic.
You just have to be careful when you do an ES that you are following the rules to the T.
Yeah.
So that's why this would be heavily involved with performance reviews and,
We want to schedule a work session now.
I'd rather get through some things that I'm doing on my end. For you guys.
Can we wait until March to schedule some more things?
And, yeah,
Okay.
I'd rather, I'm so
Let's just
tired
not forget.
now.
yeah, who's gonna bring it up again?
Well, I'm thinking about it all the time. So just so you know, it's not gonna.
We're so efficient. Look at all we did today.
Yep.
It wasn't easy.
Any more discussion?
Is there any more discussion?
No. Public comment.
All right, this is the second opportunity for public comment. Do we have any?
Any public comment over Zoom? Going once? Twice? No public comment.
All right, then this meeting is concluded.
3:28 PM. Thank you, everyone.